the back of the truck are all the parts that John has started to open up and organize. And now we begin.
We're good.
Here, John Jr. is starting to take the bolts off of the springs and also remove the correct track. Removal of the old Equiflex suspension is the next thing. Now removal of the old springs and axles, and they're ultimately going to be disposed of. Here comes the new axles. They're 4K axles. 2 of them gives us 8K capacity, and these are made by Dexter.
Yeah.
Here, John's removed the plastic sleeves from the inside of the end of the springs. He's already put the brass bushings in, and now he's putting the wet bolts in as well too. In this segment, John Jr. is taking time to actually starting to hang the new 4K springs, again, much like the axles. With 2 sets, it gives us 8K total.
Done here.
Here, John Jr. has hung the Ride CRE 3000. This is a replacement for the Equiflex. This is actually the suspension component. In between the 2 hangers and the two suspension units, John is actually starting to put together a cross member that we've added, in this particular case here, one between the 2 center hangers to provide some additional stability. Here, the 2 segments of the cross member are being put together. Later, John will actually bolt them together.
Give me a couple of those black bolts in the middle. Bars on it there on top so that they spin around. To tighten that up. Get the gun up there, just tighten.
Now the new springs are being tied into the shackles, and then the shackle to the suspension. A significant difference in the strength of the new shackles being installed over the OEM that were taken out. Here John Jr. is installing the hanger bolts that are actually going to hold the axles onto the springs.
Don't give me any more.
Now comes the gooey part. John is loading some Valvoline high temperature grease actually into the center of the brake hubs. Then he's actually going to be loading up the bearings, the inside and outside bearings both, with the same grease, and also installing the seals. You just keep doing that till the grease comes up through the top seam?
Mm-hmm. You see it start
Yeah.
coming out there.
Yep.
You go all the way around it.
In the background, John is starting to secure the pieces of the cross member that have been put together. Here, John Jr. started to use some self-tapping screws in the frame and starting to hang components for where the brake lines are actually going to come through. As well, he's going to be starting to put the housing for the actual brake mechanism on the end of the spindle here. Lock thread, or thread lock, whatever you want to call it.
Thread locker. It's the red. What?
You gotta sound like Doug McKinney. Hey, good day, man.
Everything but the wheels and tires being replaced. And the leveling system, but everything else is. So we got new axles, new springs, new brakes, new suspension, shackles, the whole shooting match.
Put that over the axle.
Throughout the course of the day, a number of people stopped by to see what was going on. In particular, a number of people are planning on having this work done as well too. What you can't see is off to the right. John is actually starting to feed some of the brake line through. John Jr.'s going to help a little bit as well too. But what he's doing is installing the castle nut on the end of the outside bearing. He's going to tighten it down as much as he can with the channel locks, and then what he'll do is he'll back it off and basically just finger tighten it after that.
How are you today? I'm doing pretty good, dude. They're tough. They're you know, they make a difference.
Here, John Jr. is just starting to install some of the brake lines to the actual caliper and unit itself.
The cheaper end, they're a couple $100. You know, you can get something like that. You know. Anytime if you ever have these off calipers,
Okay.
Loctite it back.
Okay.
Those two bolts right there you're putting in now. That takes your whole caliper off. Replace your pads, you know, just like that. Snap in and out. Push your plunger back in with the C clamp or something, you know. And,
It's been a long time since I've done disc brakes,
right.
but
that's
there's
how
not
it's
much to
done.
them.
Right.
Yeah.
That's how it's done.
Yeah.
And it'll just pull off. You know, they're pretty simple, really. But
And just C-clamp?
Loctite those. Do lock. Yeah, you can just
C-clamp
take a
to pull the plunger
big
in?
C-clamp.
Yeah.
And just push the plunger back
Okay.
in. Yeah. It should go in easy, you know.
Here, John Jr. is just installing a brake caliper.
Did you show him the wear markers on the pads?
I didn't.
Here, John is prepping the actuator, actually connecting some of the wiring that's going to be fished up into the hitch, where it's going to be connected to the 7-pin
Did you have an
adapter.
imagination, John, or are there different gauges on some of that wiring?
Yeah, there's.
Okay.
Definitely. Power in the ground or a heavier.
Okay.
These are signal wires here.
Got it. Okay.
Lighter. Then this is just a power for the breakaway. That'll run hot to the battery. Uninterrupted. It don't turn off with a switch or anything.
John Jr. is just torquing down the hanger bolts.
I'll tell you, that's what you got to keep right there, especially when you're doing brakes. Hey, that's what we work for, and you know, we try to treat each one of them like they're our own, you know, and so, you know, you gotta have a little bit of a conscience, you know.
John just got done applying some heat to the shrink wrap connections to secure them, and now he's putting electrical tape around the wiring harness.
See, now all those connections are all in a separate place.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so none of them can touch or nothing, you know. No chance of it.
Got it.
Plug right there. You're gonna have 3 T's underneath here, right back here by the wheels. 3 brass T's, look like that color right there.
Okay.
And what that does, the event you tear up a line, say, you know, blow a tire, tear up one of those rubber lines, you trace that metal line back to the T, unhook it out of the T,
Okay.
and then screw that plug in there.
So we don't lose all the fluid.
Well, so you still have brakes.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
if you break a line, then your brakes are gone.
Yeah.
And so you screw that plug in there, even if your fluid runs out, the pump won't pump air into it.
Okay.
So you should be able to unhook that line, put that plug in, fill it with fluid. Should have still 3 brakes.
Okay.
Which is still way better than electric.
Here John is actually starting to fish the brake line, and in addition starting to use a self-tapping screws to tie in the brake lines to the cross member. If you notice up above, the brake lines are not exactly in a straight line down the end or the side of the RV unit, and there's a reason for that. In the event that we were to hit a big hole or a pothole or something like that, and the suspension were to come up and pivot up, he purposely did not run the brake lines right above the suspension in the event that that were to happen, and to avoid the brake lines from actually being hit. And you can see a little dip in the line that he's got right there. He did that by design and actually by purpose.
Yeah, that come through? Yeah. All right.
Just installed the actuator in the curbside propane box and fished the lines into the front storage compartment. Now John Jr. is actually starting to take those lines and feed them up into the hitch to connect to the 7-pin. Now he's opened up the electrical box in the hitch, and he's going to start attaching and connecting these wires so that they're live, and the 7-pin and the brake controller actually controls the disc brakes.
I was actually just going to take it out of that hole and route it up this way,
Okay.
up underneath.
John continues to run the brake lines down the edge of the frame. While John Jr. Actuates the brakes from the 7-pin, John here is actually bleeding the brakes. You can see in his left hand he's got a wrench, and he's opening up that bleeder valve at the same time, pouring the excess brake fluid actually into the bottle.
All right.
How can you tell that that's not pumping any more air, John, with a black hose?
You feel it.
Oh, really?
Now John Jr.'s starting to lift the axles so we can put the tires back on. At the same time, on the far side, John's actually doing some work to grease a number of the Zerks. Final order of business is get the tires on and torque them, and we're done.